So today I'm going to be talking to you about how to build a lean business. So I'm going to share with you three secrets today. The first one is how to use the lean startup methodologies in your freelance business. Secret number two is how to keep your finger on the pulse of the social media world. And secret number three is how to funnel hack competitive offers and build a winning funnel from day one. Now, I haven't structured this presentation with like secret number one and two and then three, but these are, when I created the presentation, these were the three things that I wanted to get through in the presentation that will kind of, as I go through the content, these are the three things that I want you to learn as we go through it. All right. So please, if you're taking notes, write these down now. And I know Dan's always taking great notes. So Dan, if you'd like to share your notes with everyone, that'd be awesome as well. Dan's a great note taker. So what is the lean startup? The lean startup is a process to build companies and launch products faster. It's a product development cycle that focuses on customer needs by testing assumptions and making hypotheses in your business model. The lean startup is a way of saving time and money by building what's called a minimal viable product. These are the steps that I want to dive into in today's training and help you understand exactly how the lean startup can help you in your business. I just want to take a really quick poll. If you can just type in the chat box right now. Who has heard about the lean startup before? Just please, everyone answer a yes or a no. I want to gauge right now if anyone has heard of this before or studied before. All right, perfect. So it looks like half and half. Perfect. So here we go. So the lean startup was started by this guy. His name's Eric Ries. I first heard of him when I was listening to this podcast on a podcast called the Entrepreneurs Thought Leaders Program from Stanford University. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is that I want to share with you some of the resources and places that I go to for information, as well as why. So when I was very first getting started in my business, my first year or two in business, I remember I used to listen to every single podcast that would get published on this podcast. And what was very interesting about it is like that is how I started getting my knowledge around social media, because the people who would speak at this event, is very similar to like internet masterminds, kind of like how you'd bring speakers out to give a talk. Except these speakers are all people who went to like Stanford or Harvard, or MIT, and went out, started technology companies, and now they're coming back to talk about what they learned or the lessons learned from starting that company. And so it was very focused around the tech industry. It was very interesting about when you're learning about the tech industry in that way, a lot of, social media, it's all tech, right? Like the whole concept of the lean startup is how, social networking sites are being built, how technology companies are being built. And so there was like two big benefits to studying this world of business, this world of technology and business. One is that you're learning about all the latest tools, right? So you know which tools can be used to help you grow and scale a business, right? So all these online tools, right? The other one too is that you actually learn the psychology behind why they're making the tools and why they're working. So you get a deeper understanding of how these social networking sites work. To give you an example of the kind of people that spoke at these entrepreneur thought leader talks, Mark Zuckerberg has been there, I think a couple times. Bill Gates has been there. The Google guys have been there. I remember when Instagram first got started, the Instagram guys were there. Several of these tech companies, Snapchat, like a lot of these technology companies, a lot of the founders have come out of San Francisco or in that area and at Stanford. And I remember one time I was at an event in San Jose. I went to a Tony Robbins event in San Jose. I was driving back to San Francisco to go spend a week there, and then I ended up seeing a sign for Stanford. So I said, "Hey, I'm gonna go check it out." So I went and I spent the day in campus at Stanford. I tried to find if there was an actual entrepreneurial thought leaders event happening that day. There wasn't, but there was some other events happening. I went to a talk at Stanford just to kind of get the feel of what it was like there. And it's really amazing how it's very much like going to a meetup here in Vancouver, except for in San Francisco, you have some very smart and very successful entrepreneurs to learn from. So Eric Ries spoke there. I think this is back in 2009. And if you actually go and watch his talk, and by the way, the slides that I'm going through here, they're downloadable underneath this video. And if you open it up, it's all clickable. Okay, so if you click on that video icon, it's actually going to take you to the video. You can watch this video. If you click on the Entrepreneur Thought Leaders icon, it will take you to the podcast so you can subscribe to it on iTunes, right? I highly recommend really going in and learning this information. And, what I used to do is replace music on my phone with podcasts. And that's how I would learn. I used to go to the gym, listen to a podcast, right? So every time I'd be out, I go grocery shopping, I'd be listening to a podcast. So I'm just always learning, always, having, new insights in my mind all the time. And I told you before, like a great way to get new ideas is by combining two different industries, right? So you go and look at how they do marketing in the technology industry, and then you can apply that to, pretty much any other business, right? You can look at how they do marketing, for restaurants, and then apply that to something else, right? I studied design, right? And I applied that to my business, right? And so it's really great to listen to a podcast there's several other podcasts, but this is one that I learned a lot from. And so when Eric Ries was doing this talk, he kind of explained that this was something very new at the time back in 2009. It was like, he mentions in the talk, like he had, he'd just been talking about it for a few months prior to this. And after that, it really did explode. And then he ended up writing this book called The Lean Startup. Again, I highly recommend also reading this book, but just to understand the full scope of what the Lean Startup is about. But there's also a lot of videos online where you can learn this very quickly as well. Shortly after I saw that video, I saw an interview with Eric Ries being interviewed by a tech blogger named Robert Scoble. Scoble also goes by Scobleizer. So I used to, again, watch every video that Robert Scoble would put out on his YouTube channel because he was going around and interviewing technology companies. I remember him interviewing the guys that made Siri, Siri on the iPhone. So Siri was actually a company that was actually bought out by Apple. People don't know the exact amount. It was never disclosed, but a lot of people think they were bought out for like $100 million. But I remember like him talking about and getting excited about Siri because of its AI, comparing it to a site like Aardvark, which we'll talk about later on, and just talking about AI, and the importance of AI and how it's going to affect search and what could kill Google and all this stuff, where it was just open up all new ideas to understand kind of where the future of internet marketing could be going, right? So, so again, that was when like I had seen the talk on the Stanford site, on the Entrepreneur Thought Leaders podcast, something like that. And I thought that was interesting, and then it was maybe, a year later or so that then Eric Ries was being interviewed by Robert Scoble. And that's when I had realized that this really opened up a whole like phenomenon of business methodologies. And the way that a lot of people, especially in the US, are looking at it is the Lean Startup methodology is basic business school now, right? It's like if you were to go take an entrepreneur program, they're going to teach you a lot about what is in the Lean Startup model. And I know that Eric Ries and others that are like involved in that are actually trying to change the curriculum of like when you go to school to learn business, you don't want to learn about business to get a job. You want to learn about business to become an entrepreneur. So it's a very common misconception of going to college or university to study business, like a lot of my friends did. They thought they were going to learn to start their own business, but in fact it wasn't. They were learning how to go and be an employee at a business, right? It was very different. So this is really about entrepreneurship. Now, again, the reason why I'm sharing Robert Scoble with you is, he's just another tech blogger I recommend that you follow and, watch the videos. You'd be amazed at how much you can learn by, watching interviews of people who are trying to start up new social networks and understanding their mentality and how they think. The other great thing on YouTube is that you can actually go in and watch the Lean Startup conferences on YouTube for free. I believe this is a 5-day conference that they do. And every time they do it, they actually produce all the content for free on YouTube. I've watched a couple years of these conferences. I think I watched 2013 and 2014. I haven't watched 2015 yet. But I learned a lot and this is all free information on YouTube. Now, the other thing about this is when you go in and you start watching these videos, learning about these technology companies, learning about what they did, these people are growing multi-million and billion-dollar companies. And you can apply a lot of what they did to your business. Like, how I talk about creating a viral thank you page, creating a viral loop? I learned that by, paying attention to what technology companies do to do what they call growth hacking. I learned the term growth hacking from the technology world, right? And so whenever I'm looking at, I want to, do a new webinar and I want to get a whole bunch of new people on it, what I used to do is I would just email my list and say, go and register for the webinar. After they register, I'd say, would you share this with your friends? And every time I would do a webinar, I would get 50 to 100 new people on my email list because all my contacts were going, registering, and then sharing. And it was reducing even my acquisition costs and so on. Even if you're running advertising through the page, you can actually reduce your acquisition costs that way. So I learned that style of thinking by following the technology world and kind of what was happening in the technology world. Remember, I'm not learning about how to code or web development or anything like that. I'm learning about their mentality of how they think. So I've shared these two resources as two great resources for you to go out and continue your learning for free through YouTube, learning about business and technology. Some examples of businesses that use the lean startup methodologies and grew huge businesses. The first one here is Aardvark. So Aardvark was what they would consider like I think we call it latent semantic indexing. Okay, so basically it was like a search engine, but it was a search engine that would understand phrases. Or how do I say? Like they would understand the intent of a phrase. So it was based off of some artificial intelligence. I remember hearing about it when it first launched. I remember using it, and a lot of people in the technology world were talking about how it could take over Google one day. I swear I was hearing stories about that. Maybe a month later, Google bought them for $50 million and actually integrated their technology into search. Another one here is Siri, right? Siri also got sold to Apple, as I mentioned earlier. People speculate between $100 to $200 million. Okay. Dropbox, apparently there's this myth or story about Steve Jobs walking into Dropbox and pitching the owner of Dropbox on selling Dropbox to Apple. He ended up saying no to the offer, and I think the offer was for like several $100 million at the time. He said no to Steve Jobs. Then Steve Jobs ended up building out iCloud, which is also a file storage system. But it is estimated that Dropbox is now worth $8 billion. Now, if you study anything about the lean startup, you'll notice that they actually use Dropbox as a case study very often. So Dropbox is, and the owners at Dropbox are very much into the lean startup. Even Facebook, very, very much a lean startup sort of company. Another company here was Instagram, ended up getting sold for $1 billion to Facebook. All right, WhatsApp sold for $19 billion a year later to Facebook, right? And when you really look into like kind of why these companies got sold at these prices and kind of research it, you'll understand it was all because of their user base, right? They were buying the user base, and with Aardvark, they were buying the technology, right? With Siri, buying the technology. Dropbox, they were buying the technology. But with both Instagram and WhatsApp, they were buying the user base here. right? And the other one here, which has been a lot of companies have tried to buy, is Snapchat, which is now estimated to be worth $20 billion. Again, they're not trying to buy the technology; people want to buy it because of the user base, right? So these companies built up large audiences, and now they're worth billions of dollars. So how can we apply the lean startup to our business? So it was very interesting. During the time that I was really into the lean startup and really studying it a lot, I spent a lot of time just kind of like, I used to be so into this whole world of technology. I tried to start my own tech startups a couple of times with a friend of mine who's a developer. We didn't do very well at it, right? I don't know technology that well. But at that time, I went to an event here with Eben Pagan, right? And I started learning from Eben Pagan. And what was interesting about Eben Pagan is that the methodology that he was teaching about business was exactly the same as what Eric Ries is talking about. For a while, I even thought maybe Eric Ries was getting ideas from Eben maybe getting ideas from him, but it was very, very similar. So Eben is talking about how to build a information marketing business, and Eric Ries is talking about how to build a technology business, and it really didn't matter. The business models were the same. You build, you measure, and you learn. It's all about building something, testing different hypotheses, right? Testing all of your assumptions, right? Measuring the results, seeing what you learn, and then building again and building onto it. It's not about building a huge infrastructure because you think that that is what the market needs, right? It's about building something small, right? And then putting it out there and seeing what happens and then coming back and learning. And as a side note in a funny story, I went to another Eben Pagan event, several years later with my friend Lucas. Some of you know him. And we both got VIP tickets to this event, and part of that we got to go to a VIP lunch with Eben Pagan, and so when we were at the VIP lunch, you can line up and ask a question to Eben, and there was about 100 people that were at the VIP lunch. And so Lucas was kind of like procrastinating. Should I go and ask him a question? Because he had a question. He's like, I don't know if it's a good question. I'm like, yeah, dude, you should go and do it. So he finally gets in line, and he's the very last person in the line at this point. And he ends up waiting the line up the entire lunch. So he's in there for like an hour. I was eating the whole time, watching him in line. And then it comes right to the very end of the lunch, and Eben's got to go. He's got to go back on stage. And Lucas goes up and asks him a question, and he says, he was mentioning how like a lot of women take his training and whether it makes sense to target only women or only men, right? That was his question, something like that. And then Eben just goes, you got to test it. And then he walked off stage, right? And then Lucas, like we and him, we joked a lot about it, how he waited an hour to ask a question, and all Eben said was, you got to test it, right? So we've continued to make that joke to each other. Sometimes Lucas would ask me for some advice, and I just say, you got to test it. So what's funny about that, I mean, it was funny just how the whole situation happened. But it was actually a really good lesson, right? Because it's true. You always just got to test it. There's no real answer, right? A lot of times people ask me for advice, and I can give my opinion based on potentially an assumption or a hypothesis. But at the end of the day, you got to test it, right? And that's how you're going to grow your business. So the lean startup has something called the minimal viable product. It stands for MVP. A minimal viable product is a version of your product or offer with just enough features to be released. You get the product in front of customers to get feedback, and typically you will show this to early adopters, or in some cases what you consider the low-hanging fruit. So people who would be obviously like a very good fit for this, and typically you want them to pay for this, so that way they really want it, even if it's a low cost. But on a very, very early version, you would typically give it to them for free as well. And that's okay to do if you're on a very early version of it. But really, to get the best sort of feedback, you need people to actually come through as a paid customer. Okay. Now this works in technology business, and it works in brick and mortar business. It's the same sort of thing. Again, the lean startup is kind of targeted towards and geared towards technology companies, but it's the same sort of thing here for us, right? When we put out an offer to our market for social media services, we don't want to have this like gigantic package, right? We want to have the most simplest version that we can offer first, and then start getting feedback based on our offer. All right. And again, you want to offer this to people who would just, who would be the best fit for it. Right. So that's why I mentioned that you could make your offer for free just for one person who would be the best fit for it. So that way you can get feedback, get your case study, and so on. Right. So what you don't want to do is try to offer everything under the sun right off the bat. You want to simplify your offer to the minimal viable product, and then get customer feedback to learn exactly what the customers want from your product or from your offer. All right. So there are some jokes in the tech in the tech scene about like how minimal can you get, and people are talking about how they would build a landing page for a new software, right, without actually building a software. They would put up the landing page with a button that says, sign up now, as an example. And they would just see, first of all, when they run ads, would anyone even click on the ads or be interested in the software? And if so, when they land on the page, would they even try to sign up, right? Because what if they build this whole software, they spend a year trying to build this thing out, put in all the features they think they need, put up the landing page, they got the sign up button, they start driving traffic to it, and nobody even clicks the sign up button. It would have been a huge waste of time to even build the software. So a lot of software companies actually go to that extent of not even building the software. So same thing for you, when you put out your offer, you don't have to build every aspect of it. First, put it out and see if anyone will even be interested in taking you up on the offer. You might notice that I do that a lot in my business as well. A lot of the programs that I would run, I wouldn't even develop the program until I first saw if anybody was even interested in being a part of the program, right? So I would test it first. Last year, I did something called 4 Steps to Social Media Profits. I built a landing page and I saw, will anyone even buy a ticket? I built the landing page before I even had an event. I was selling tickets before I even had, a location to the event, okay? Then people started buying tickets. I said, okay, cool. I booked the venue, which was Science World, started selling even more. The day before the event, I built out the slide deck, right? And then at the event, we sold a program called Instant Social Media Profits. And I bet you can guess when I started building out the program, right? Like a couple days before we actually had to deliver it. So we never even built the whole course until we had already sold it. We pre-sold it first. Right, so that's how you can build a minimal viable product. So in my case of building a course, I first just built the offer and then saw would anyone even take it. And then I built the course, and the course kicked ass. It was an awesome course, right? Same with the social media director program. If you look at that, right, I use the same methodology. I used to teach it in person before I scaled it online, right? And so I didn't have to go and figure out how to do all this online stuff and build a sales funnel and a website. All I did was just sell it as an in-person workshop at a very low cost, and then looked at, did people get results? Who got the most results from it? What would people be willing to pay for it? And so on. And I've continuously come back, I built, I measured, I learned, and I kept on building. So you will notice a lot of aspects of my business. Now that I've told you this and shared this with you, you'll notice that I do a lot more of this in my business. Another example of a minimal viable product a company that was started as a minimal viable product was McDonald's, right? So McDonald's started by selling burgers, fries, and shakes, right? And that was it. It was actually started in Richmond, British Columbia. I actually worked at the very first McDonald's, by the way. So originally it was just burgers, fries, and shakes. And then over time, right, it became very popular. People started going there. They started adding on more and more menu options, right? Now when you go there, they've got who knows how many different options. I haven't been to a McDonald's in a long time, but there's a lot of stuff, right? And you've noticed even over the last few years, they added now they have McCafe. They've got a menu of healthy items and salads, and they have their burger options. So they almost have 3 different menus now, but that's not how it originally started. So if you want to start your own burger franchise, you wouldn't start by mimicking McDonald's. You would today, right? You would mimic McDonald's when they started, 50 years ago or whatever, right? That's how you would start a burger chain. The other one here is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola started with just Coke, right? It was just Coke. That was it, Coca-Cola, right? And then they started adding on more and more flavors, right? But originally it started with just one flavor. So if you want to start a soft drink company, the way you would do it was you'd create one flavor and you would sell it really well until it becomes so popular people demand another flavor. Another company was Apple. Apple started with just one computer. And then they slowly started to expand to have more types of computers, right? Originally, it was just a personal computer, right, for people at their homes, right? At the time, there was no, all-in-one personal computer. And I don't know if you know the story about Apple, but you know that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started Apple after, I think it was in 1996 or something like that. Steve Jobs ended up getting laid off of Apple, so he got fired as a CEO. In the next few years, Apple started developing a ton of products. They started hiring a lot, developing all these products. And then they were about to go out of business, and they asked Steve Jobs to come back and take over Apple again. They wanted a new CEO. And the first thing that Steve Jobs did is he cut out all of their products. And all he did was kept a personal computer, like a desktop computer, and a laptop. And that was it. I think they had... I think it was just those two options. I think maybe they had one other kind of computer or something like that. But they were at the time developing, I believe it was like 30 plus different products, right? And now Apple, every couple years, every few years, they will release a new product. And what I see right now is happening in Apple, what I feel now after Steve Jobs has passed away, is they're going back to that cycle of creating more and more products that nobody really needs, which is, like the Apple Watch and, all this kind of stuff, right? Different versions of iPads. There's so many different kinds of iPads now. So many different types of iPhones you could buy. You can buy the iPhone 5, the 5C. You can buy the iPhone 6 and the 7. And, there's too many options now. And so, but I mean, they're still making money, so I can't really argue it, right? But if they start, going downwards, I would say the reason being, you go to the Apple Store now and you can't go there and make a clear decision on what you want. There's too many options, right? So I originally started Web Friendly in 2009, and then I created basically my first product was Internet Masterminds, which was also started in 2009. That next year, I started what was called the New Facebook for Brands workshop. A year after that, I created another product that was called the Social Media Director Certification Program, which we still run today. A few years after that, we then created the SEO Director. So what happened between 2011 and 2014 is that I just relentlessly focused on just selling one thing really well. It was one offer, Social Media Director, and that was it. I had no other workshops, no other training, no other offers. And it wasn't until 2014 that we said, I was hanging out with a friend of mine, Rob, who is an SEO guy. We used to go to the gym all the time. During our gym sessions, we used to mastermind, and we came up with the idea of doing SEO Director, which looked like a great fit. We ran it, and it sold out like crazy, right? We did one webinar, and that one webinar, we did over $70,000 in sales. We ran this program twice. Now Rob's busy. He's doing his things. I'm busy, and right now I'm, again, focusing on just selling Social Media Director. And then in 2015, I started 4 Steps of Social Media Profits. At that event, I launched the Instant Social Media Profits and the Instant Sales Systems program. And again, this last year in 2016, I really haven't focused on selling this program. I went back to only selling one thing. I didn't want to get distracted by having too many offers for too many markets. I'd rather just sell one thing really well. I knew that I can grow my business with just one product. I didn't need a whole bunch of products in order to be successful, right? So you want to refine one product, get it to the level where you've reached the max, and then come up with the next thing, right? So I'm sharing this with you so you see that I've kind of used this lean startup methodology in order to grow my business. And I look at, in terms of Web Friendly being the training business, I look at every program as a separate product, right? And then how do I actually sell that product? And do I want to sell, 6 products, or do I want to just sell one really well, right? And you want to look at that when taking on clients as well. That's why, I want to limit the amount of clients that I have. I only want to work with just a handful of clients so I can just work with them really, really well. So the process here is to build your product and then get feedback and either tweak it or pivot. And I want to talk real quick about what it means to pivot in your business. So a pivot is a change in strategy without a change in vision. So some examples of some really big companies that did a pivot. The first one is Twitter. Twitter originally started as kind of like a podcasting platform where you can send voice notes to each other, right? Short voice notes versus short text. They actually got some investment from some companies. And the story was that after they launched Twitter, they only had a few hundred users. They were so embarrassed, they went to their investors and asked them if they wanted their money back. And some investors did say yes, which ended up being a multi-million-dollar mistake for them, right? But Twitter ended up pivoting from a voice, audio platform to an all-text platform based on feedback that they were getting from their users. And Starbucks originally started by selling espresso machines. They weren't starting coffee shops. It wasn't until Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, he was on a trip to Italy and he was trying coffees and looking at espresso machines and that sort of thing, and realized like the experience of what it was like to have a latte, right? And they, a lot of people say that Howard Schultz brought the latte to North America, and that's what Starbucks was born on. Groupon is a very interesting story. So originally it was a not a charity, but kind of like a protesting platform called The Point. And so people would say, hey, we should go and protest about this thing. And if enough people said, yes, let's go and protest, then everyone would go and actually do the protest. Then they ended up using that same technology and platform for offers. So they would say, a company would say, hey, we'll give you this special price, but only if 100 people buy, right? So then everyone would say, yes, I want it. And then once it reached whatever the goal was, let's say 100 sales, then they would release and everyone would get the deal. That's how Groupon originally started. And now Groupon is just a daily deal site, right? So they put out deals that, everyone knows what it is, right? You get, 50 to 70% off, and you can just buy it immediately. You don't have to wait for a certain amount of people to buy. Everyone could just buy. So that was their pivot. Another one is ClickFunnels. So a lot of you may not know this. This is not a very well-known thing, but ClickFunnels actually started as an email marketing software. All right, they were trying to compete with companies like Infusionsoft and Ontraport. And then after they built they were trying to build an editor for the emails. They found a designer who had built an editor for a web editor, and they looked at it and they realized a web editor was way cooler than the email editor. So they launched with the web editor, which is what you know of ClickFunnels. Now Actionetics and Backpack have come out, which is what ClickFunnels originally intended to build, was that email marketing automation and affiliate program. And so before they even launched, they pivoted the direction. And at the end of the day, they still got to their overall vision. YouTube actually started off as a dating site. And as soon as people started uploading videos and the videos were getting really weird, they changed it to just be a site to share videos. Flickr was a video game. And what they noticed was that one part of the game was that you can upload your photos, which is what people were using the site for, just uploading photos. So what they did was they just zoomed in on that one feature, and they made that one feature the product. Another one here is PayPal. So PayPal originally started as a way to send payments through PDA, like personal computers, like I don't know if you remember the iPac. Anyone remember that? The HP iPac was like the first really good smartphone. I remember having it when I was very, very young. There's a way to just basically transmit money through a phone, so they were kind of using the internet at the time, and then they pivoted to being like an online platform, right? and web friendly. So when I very first started web friendly, I was actually started as a what do you call it? CRM. Okay, so what it was a website editor. Basically, what happened was I was working at a company, and while I was working with them, I had helped them develop a software that would allow us to basically duplicate a templated website very quickly. It was a very simple website with very few options. It had a banner, it had up to 8 tabs. It was a 3-column website, and you could have certain widgets on your website. And then the center part was where your actual content would go. And so the company spent, I think, like $8,000 or something working with their developers, developing this thing. And then I would go out and I would be able to easily sell it with just like a one-page form. And then a company would say, okay, we want this on our banner. We want these tabs. Here's our content. Here's the widgets we want. It was just very easy for us to build this website. And so what happened was I started going out selling it. I did really well selling it. But then I was a primary sales guy at this company. And so the company said, hey, Matt, if all you're doing is selling this templated site, they had like 17 developers, like all of our developers now have nothing to do because it only takes us a couple hours to make the site and we don't have to any custom development. So they're like, what are we going to do? Like fire all the developers? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, we're making so much more profit off of this content management system. And so what we decided to do is that I would branch off, start my own company, which was called Web Friendly, where I would then white label their service to be able to build and sell these sites to businesses. So I was basically cold calling, setting up meetings, going in there, and I'd sell this website for $2,000 along with SEO packages that were typically about $500 per month. And then, it didn't end up working out because there was some resentment. They didn't really want to support it. It was very glitchy, wasn't working properly. And I wasn't a developer, so it didn't really work. So I started teaching social media workshops on the side to business owners, right? And I would do that every weekend, and I would charge $300. I'd get maybe 10 or 12 people out to the workshop. At the time, that was a lot of money for me, so I was like, cool. I was like, I could just teach one workshop a month and make about $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it was, which was a good income for me at the time. I didn't have to worry about a development team, and so I ended up pivoting to doing training. Right? And then from training business owners, I'd realized that people who got the most results were the actual marketers. And then I pivoted my audience from business owners to actual marketers, which is kind of where I'm at now, right? I've kind of gotten even deeper there, but that's kind of where I'm at. So I also did the pivot. So the lean startup approach helps you to shorten your product development cycle. Okay, so you can get stuff done faster. You're not going to go and develop the entire product or the entire offer. You're just only going to do a very small portion of it. And you're going to build a product that actually meets your customer needs by actually talking to your customers. And you're going to use what's called validated learning and scientific experimentation. Okay, so you're going to prove all of your assumptions and all of your hypotheses. Okay, so that's what you want to get really good at, is testing out or understanding what is an assumption and what is real, right? Where do you have actual data to back up what you think is going to work and what is just an assumption. Okay, and you're also going to use what's called I can't even say the word. Iterative. I can't even say this word right now. Iterative. I'm so bad at saying this word. Anyways, iterative product releases. Now, what that means is that you're going to start with your minimal viable product, and then you're slowly going to release more and more features. Okay, and you're going to do that by getting feedback from the people that you're actually working with. You might notice that that's actually what I do with the social media director. All these ideas that I get for like what to offer in social media director all came from your feedback. Even most recently when we did our SMD implementation day, that came from feedback from someone from the social media directors. It came from Lara that was there. She said, hey, I'd love to actually be able to meet up in person. And so I tried it out, right? And so now it's part of the social media director is actually coming in person. The other one too is doing the social media director summit, right? That also came from feedback that we got from people in the program and so on. right? Also, actually building out your entire sales funnel with the free ebook funnel, that also came from feedback. It wasn't in the first version of the product. Now what I want to do is I'm going to play you a video from Eric Ries talking about testing assumptions. Here we go.
Just as in the hard sciences, there's no one true way to do an experiment. The experiments of physics are very different than the experiments in economics or the social sciences. The same is true in business. There are different ways to conduct experiments that can test the assumptions in a business plan. We can talk to customers in person or on the phone to really get a sense of how they react emotionally, qualitatively to our ideas. We can build a minimum viable product, some early prototype that is designed to test to see whether customers will engage or purchase. Or we could do split test or A/B experimentation, where we create different variations on a theme and see how similar groups of customers react to each. Each of these kinds of experiments is appropriate in different situations, has merits in different industries at different stages, and it's key to choose the right approach for the right situation. So for example, if you have a product that solves a clear problem that customers already know that they have, then they're very likely to be searching for the solution to that problem online. And so a really quick and easy way to test whether it's true that those customers exist and that they're searching is simply to buy search advertising at very low volumes and very low cost to see if people will click on an ad that offers them the solution to a clear problem. For example, when Zappos, the online shoe retailer, began, all they had was a website with photographs of shoes they had taken at a local shoe store. When people bought the shoes, they would walk down to the store and buy the product and send it to them. Let's say you're trying to build a new kind of collaboration tool to be used in the workplace. In that situation, what you really need to understand is who are the different stakeholders who are going to be involved in a purchase decision, who actually makes the decision to buy, who approves the check, and then who's actually going to use it. In that kind of situation, the best thing to do is actually sit down in person with those different kinds of stakeholders in a variety of companies to understand if they really have the problem you're trying to solve. The key idea here is that once we understand what assumption we're trying to test, then we want to choose the method that allows us to test that specific assumption as quickly as possible.
All right, so I wanted to play that video so you guys really can get an understanding of what an assumption is. Recently I was doing a sales call with Kelvin and his prospect, and I remember that they were asking us to integrate with their platform. They're using a platform called MindBody, right? And they were saying, we cannot build this funnel unless you could integrate with this. It just won't work, right? Which was a huge assumption that they were making, is that we couldn't generate sales if we couldn't integrate with that software. And so then I had to kind of help them kind of take a step back and say, like, why couldn't we get people in the door without integrating with the software? Because I knew integrating with the software would just take a lot of work. It wouldn't be what we call a minimal viable product, because it would take a lot of work to try to figure out how to actually integrate with that software and make the whole thing work. Right? So you want to listen very carefully when you're working with clients if they say things that are really just assumptions. I cannot tell you how many clients that I've worked with that have told me something like, oh, nobody will buy the VIP. It'll never sell. That's what they say. And I go, what do you mean? Like, have you tried it? And they're like, no. We just know. No one's going to buy the VIP. And I go, okay, so that's an assumption. Let's test it, right? So it happens all the time. So you want to get really good at understanding what is an assumption and figure out, do you have assumptions right now that you're making about your business, right? An assumption can also be looked at as like a limiting belief. If you're into, that's kind of more like a spiritual world kind of thing, but it's not real. I don't know. You know what I mean, right? But it's kind of the same thing, right? Whereas if you make a hypothesis, that means that you're making an educated guess that you're going to go and test. So you're actively making an assumption would be kind of like what a hypothesis would be, right? But a lot of people, a lot of businesses already have assumptions built in to their business infrastructure. So when you're consulting with clients, you want to listen very carefully, because they'll tell you, no, that won't work, or no, we can't do that. But really, it's just an assumption, all right? So the bottom line is that the lean startup is going to help us eliminate uncertainty. We don't want to work with clients and try to do their marketing with uncertainty. So the whole purpose of using the methodology in the lean startup is to eliminate uncertainty. Okay? So you want to validate all of your ideas and prove that it is true. This whole idea of the lean startup also falls right back into what we call funnel hacking, which Russell Brunson has recently made very popular, right? It's very much the same as the lean startup methodology. So funnel hacking is described as the process of strategically investigating the sales and marketing process of your competitors, which you can use to model and test within your own sales and marketing process. Now, in a real world example of this, what I find really funny is that there's a story, and I forget the exact details of the story, or the exact facts of the story. But there was a guy, he worked for Wendy's, and he made, I want to say it was like $200,000 a year, and his job was to find locations for Wendy's locations. And so he's being interviewed. They said, so how do you go about doing the research to find a new location for Wendy's? And he said, well, what I do is I open up a map and I look at where there's a McDonald's and I put one right beside it, right? So that was like funnel hacking, in the real world, right? Looking at, okay, well, McDonald's has already proven that this location is a good location, so we'll put one right beside it, right? So now what we're doing that is in the online world. So what you want to do is you never want to start from scratch. Anytime you're going to build a funnel, I want to back up. Our first thing I recommend is that you focus on selling your ebook funnel, right? So find clients where you can just build out the ebook funnel because it's already done for you. The whole process is already there. You already understand it. It's a very simple product where you can just sell that all day long. You could build a 6-figure business just selling ebook funnels, and that's it. But if you want to get into building even more funnels and you want to get into more funnel hacking and that sort of thing, that is what I do. What I would do is research another company that's already successful with a funnel. And when I look at the page, I look for some information. So I found these bullet points on the ClickFunnels blog. I just Googled, funnel hacking, went to an article, and these are some of the points that they mentioned that you'd want to look for. So first of all, what type of copywriting are they using in their headline? Right? What colors are they using and where? Are buttons located above or below the fold? Do they have videos or do they use just text? Are they listing benefits or features or both? Do they have social proof? What is the offer? That's the big one. What is the offer? That's really what I look for. What is the offer? Is it low cost or free? You're going to notice that most front-end offers aren't going to be like a high. You're not going to start an offer with, hey, you want to buy this $1,000 thing, right? You're going to start with something free, like opt in for a free webinar, opt in for a free ebook, opt in for a free consultation, right? Or something low cost, like, pay $29 for, this new fitness program, or pay $7 for this video training, that sort of thing, right? The next thing here is looking for, are there pop-ups anywhere inside the funnel, right? Is the header section of the site fixed? What that means is, does it move when you scroll down? Does it just stay at the top, or when you scroll down, does it scroll with you? Is there a full sign-up form or just an opt-in form? So how much information do they ask? How many fields are they actually asking in their funnel? Is there, are there multiple steps it takes, and how many steps are there, right? Go through the entire funnel. Like, even go to the point where we actually buy the product to see the entire funnel and the back end. Are prices mentioned for their products? If so, what are their price points? How many words are there on the page? Is it short copy or long copy? So these are some of the things that you want to look for when funnel hacking, right? I will typically, the main thing that I want to know is what is the offer, and I want to look at the overall layout of the page and try to diagnose the psychology of the marketing on the page. All right, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Yeah, Ralph mentioned that limiting beliefs are real and powerful. Absolutely, yeah, I 100% totally agree with that. I was just comparing it with like assumptions in the business world that I was talking about, but yeah, I totally believe in limiting beliefs, like 1,000,000%. All right, cool. And then Ralph also mentioned something about a program called The Foundation. I'm actually in contact with the people from the foundation recently. I've been chatting with them. So it's a program that helps you actually build a technology company, and they also have a very similar process here. I'm pretty sure they use the Lean Startup. So what I want to do now is go through a live demo of doing what we call funnel hacking.